Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Morning, we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 31. Is that what's there?
Yes.
Taijasattu vikurvana Indriyani dashabhavan Jnana Shakti Kriya Shakti Buddhi Pranas Chataijaso Srotram Tvagranadrik Jiva Vagdo Midrangri Payava Taijasat by the passionate egoism to but Vikurvanat transformation of Indriyani the senses Dasa 10 Avavan generated Jnana Shakti the 5 senses for acquiring knowledge Kriya Shakti the 5 senses of activities Buddhi intelligence Prana the living energy Cha also Taijaso all products of the mode of passion Shrotram the sense for hearing Pak the sense for touching Grana the sense for smelling Drik the sense for seeing Jiva the sense for tasting Vak the sense for speaking Do the sense for handling Medra the genitals Angri the legs Payava the sense for evacuating Translation by further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs are like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. Purport. The living condition in material existence depends more or less on one's intelligence and powerful living energy. Intelligence, to counteract the hard struggle for existence, is assisted by the senses for acquiring knowledge, and the living energy maintains himself by manipulating the active organs like the hands and legs. But on the whole, the struggle for existence is an exertion of the mode of passion. Therefore, all the sense organs headed by intelligence and the living energy, prana, are different products and byproducts of the second mode of nature called passion. This mode of passion, however, is the product of the air element as described before. Translation by further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. So now we have this evolution of the elements and also the body and the senses and so on. It's coming now. Previously, it was mentioned that the mind, all of the mind. There's material mind, material intelligence. These are subtle, and the body made of earth, water, fire, air, and so on, more gross. But the mind is manifest, it's more under the mode of goodness, and the demigods who control the directions and so on in the universe and elements and so on, they're also in the mode of goodness. Now we're coming to the individual and the body, the sum of all the senses, the body, and then the senses and the intelligence. This is said to be a transformation of the mode of passion. Now here Prabhupada, very interestingly, he says that the life in the world, the living condition, more or less depends on one's intelligence and powerful living energy. The prana intelligence, one gets a material body, as I just described, and made of gross elements, and then the subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego, false ego. These are subtle. The soul proper is covered by these external layers, both subtle and gross. Now, when the soul is identifying with the subtle and gross elements as himself, then it's a struggle, because the soul is none of that. The soul proper is spirit and eternally connected to the Supreme Soul, Sri Krishna. But when the identification is there, then the struggle begins, artificial situation, and how to live in the world with all that. One gets in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned how the soul gets a certain type of eye and ear and nose and so on, certain mind and intelligence. This is all on the material platform. And then indulges in materialistic activities. Now, to do all that, one has to use their intelligence. Now, the combination of intelligence and what's here is called also prana. Prana is now there's a general category of prana, which can mean the life air or the breath. And there are different, the prana is the general word, and then there's subcategories of prana, air moving down, air moving up, air balancing, sama and dhyana and so on. All these different subcategories of prana. But more subtle than that is the prana also means the life energy. It is not just breath. And there's a very interesting point here made by Prabhupada, because to exist in the world, one needs to use the intelligence to harness all the activities of the knowledge-acquiring senses and the active senses, and so using the intelligence in that way. But also one is dependent on this prana, this breathing, of course, but the life energy. Now, it's described in various shastras. Some describe that the prana, the life energy, is moving throughout the universe. And it's avyakta, it's unmanifest, the unmanifested stage in the macrocosmic situation. Then it's manifest, I was describing this last week, pradhana and prakriti. Prakriti is the manifest state. So when it's manifest, it goes throughout the universe, that energy, and it goes through each individual body. There are different energy channels. That's a more subtle level of prana. Energy channels. People have heard of chakras, swirling vortexes of energy in the different parts of the body. You can't see these things under the microscope. These are subtle energies, not visible, ordinarily visible. Also, along with the chakras, there's all these what's called the nadis. The nadis. Now, some shastras describe this tens and tens and tens of thousands. I've read one account as 72,000 of them. Others give more or less, but they're everywhere. They're channels of energy that move, just like the veins and the arteries are moving the blood around. The arteries generally the blood goes out, and the veins bring it back in. It goes to every cell. The blood nourishes all the cells. So it is said this subtle energy, this prana, nourishes all these nadis go all over the body, and that life energy nourishes the cells with that life energy. Described there are three primary ones. One is called the Shushumna, which is the main one, which goes from the spine to the crown. And then there's another Ida and Pingala on either side, and they crisscross. Where they meet, the chakras are formed. So this is all known in those who are students of the yoga system, understand these things a little bit more deeply. The nadis, and if they're blocked and this and that and the other, then there's imbalance. But the nadis are there. So this Shushumna, the main one, goes, and then the others, Ida, the Ida goes to the left nostril, and the other one, Pingala, goes to the right nostril, and they crisscross. So these are a life energy. So now there's some description that the life energy is from Atma, the individual soul, other from the Paramatma, other it's Paramatma, but the expansion of energy from Paramatma which pervades the universe. So this prana is everywhere, and it's within all of us. And the living entity living in the body needs this prana. Needs the prana, and needs the prana to function properly. As I said, when the prana is not functioning properly, then there's all sorts of imbalances and diseases, both physical and mental diseases ensue. So interestingly, Prabhupada makes a point of this. He says that living in the material world in the conditional stage is dependent on the intelligence to work things out, how to do it, and the powerful living energy. And he terms it that with a powerful living energy, prana. And actually the prana may be carried through the breath, but it's also, the breath is one thing, but beyond the breath, it goes through so many, all over. It nourishes all the cells of the body, the prana. So this prana is actually coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's my understanding of it, and it's an expansion. That's his energy. It's his energy, and it's sustaining all of us. And so when the prana is good, the prana goes out, and then the body can no longer, the soul goes out, the prana goes out, the intelligence is there. So interestingly enough, how it's very kind of a mechanistic system really, and the body is described as a machine, kind of complicated in many ways, how it's kind of all working. People have to study how the body works for many years, and even then they don't fully understand. So all right, now we have these knowledge acquiring senses. Now what is one knowledge acquiring senses was mentioned here? What is one knowledge acquiring sense? The eyes. The eyes. Now, as I said, the different species of life have different types of eyes. As humans, we have our eyes. So we use our eyes to see things. So we acquire knowledge through seeing. So this is one knowledge acquiring sense. So what's another one? The ear, to hear something. We acquire knowledge through hearing about something. And another one? Touch, the skin. By touching, we can feel things. All right, this is wood. We can feel it. This is wood. Of course, we heard about it first, and otherwise we wouldn't know what it was. But I remember many years ago. Is Lagudi here? He might have been in Double Bay. Oh, so long ago. But he did a class, and he showed the example of the knowledge acquiring senses, and which is the best actually, especially in this age, and to use more primarily. And he demonstrated how the hearing is the best, because he produced something that he got from India, and he had Lagudi come up. And he blindfolded him, right? He blindfolded him. And so he said that, all right, touch this. What do you think it is? So he was guessing this, that, the other. He didn't get it right by touching it. And then, of course, smelling. The nose is another one, right? Knowledge acquired. So then he had him smell it. This is a fun class, actually. We were all enthralled. Oh, this is good. Where's all this going? So then he had him smell it. All right, what's it smell like? Well, it smells, I can't. You know what it is by smelling? And touching. No, I can't work it out. And so touching and smelling and tasting. The tongue, of course, tasting something, you acquire knowledge. You see little babies especially, they like to know about things by tasting it and tasting everything all the time. So that, he tasted it. He said, and normally we don't do this, considered a bit moochy, but by slobbering your tongue over something. But nevertheless, just for the example. And then he tasted it. All right, by tasting it, can you tell? Oh, I don't know. It's it's not wood, it's not that. And it's like I really can't ascertain what it is. All right, so then he took the blindfold off. And then, so then he was seeing it. So what is it? So he didn't recognise it. He didn't know what it was. None of us did either, because we've never seen one like, I can't even remember what it is even today. I can't remember what it was. But he'd never seen anything like that. So even by seeing it, he couldn't say what it was, because he'd never seen something like that before. So by tasting it, by touching it, by smelling it, by by seeing it, even seeing it. Generally, as humans, we rely a lot on seeing, but even by seeing it, he didn't know what it was. So then Madhavisa said, now I'm going to describe to you what this is. I got this in India, and it's this and this and this and that, and then everyone, that's what it is. So then he used that as an example. Actually, hearing is the best, because you can use all these other senses, but when someone describes something to you, you can actually understand it. Even the other things don't work. Of course, some species of life are more reliant on other senses, but as human beings, hearing, like the eagle, like we always say, the eagle eye. The eagle can see something from so far away, so even it's very small. So the eagle can see. And what's another example? By, like the bear. The bear, for example, or the dog has a very acute sense of smelling. You can smell something miles away, isn't it? Just by smelling. And, so we have all these examples of other species of life that are, have the senses, the eye is more the prominent one, or the smell. The smell is the most prominent, or what other senses are more prominent. Hearing, hearing is very acute. They said that like the deer can hear very, very sharply. There's the slightest sound. So you have all these senses. These are knowledge-acquiring senses. So these knowledge-acquiring senses feed the information to the intelligence. Now we have to remember that there is the soul proper, but there is the gross body and the subtle body. There's an element which is called mind, material mind. There's material intelligence and material ego, false ego, ahankara. So these are all material ingredients. They're subtle, just as the gross elements are material, so are the subtle ones. So with the material intelligence being fed all this, and then the mind, of course, is coming up with all sorts of ideas. The mind is the reciprocal, not the vessel for ideas. The mind just comes up with ideas. What about this? What about that? And then the knowledge-acquiring senses are feeding. The mind is ideas, and so the intelligence gathering all this information, works out how to exist in the world. Gathering all these things, plus the mind gives ideas. So it's existing within the world. A manifestation in all species of life. Even the ants, you see how they're using their intelligence. Very, very clever. Very, very clever. They know to go here, they know to go there. Even if they're disturbed, they somehow or other come back. I remember up in Graceville, when we were up at the temple in Graceville in Brisbane, there was a whole, the owner of our centre, the owner of the property there, had to cut down the big trees because the neighbour complained that there were 3 big, huge trees, and the neighbour complained that the roots of the trees had broken through into her swimming pool, right? And the water was breaking up the swimming pool. But interestingly enough, we found out that when they went down there, they said that the trees, very intelligent, their roots went down and could tell there was water there. Somehow or other, the root system, the tree could tell there was water there, and it sends out, we've seen roots of trees, generally we think of big, huge roots, but actually, initially, it sends very fine little tips of the roots, and the cement and concrete is porous. So that the roots were getting into the pores of the concrete and going in there, looking for the water, and then gradually expanding and breaking up that concrete that formed the swimming pool. So how's that for intelligence, even for the tree? It worked out where the water was, sent its roots in, went in small, then broke it up to get more water. And you see that, how even the plants, they turn around, follow the sun. They kind of lean over there. Sometimes you see a whole bunch of trees leaned over in a certain direction. That's because they're trying to get more sun. So you see this manifestation of intelligence. So it's getting fed information. Even the trees getting fed this information at some sort of intelligence. It's not so developed like perhaps in the humans, but some sort of intelligence there to work out how to survive, how to exist. So this is the point that's made here. How to exist. And then getting that information uses the acting senses. So what are the acting senses here is mentioned here? What's one that's mentioned? The legs, the arms. What else?
Speech.
Here's mentioned the legs, the arms, the genital, the evacuating organ. These are all acting senses. So therefore the intelligence works out and deciphers all this information, and then gives the direction. All right, now we have the. Remember years ago I wrote a play one time in Melbourne about the senses. And then I think about it, it's really funny because we had these devotees dressed up as senses, and then one devotee came in with a big nose. It's like a bit of cardboard that we painted to mean a big nose. Another one came in dressed as an ear. Right? So we showed that all the connection between all the senses and that play was about the stomach. How the senses have to feed the stomach. If they don't feed the stomach, then the whole body dies. So similarly, if you don't feed the soul, that was the point of the play. But anyway, the senses, also all these things are worked out how to exist in the world. Now that's life in the world, but it's very entangling, and it's a struggle, and there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of suffering there. So the living condition in the world is dependent on this. But as far as spirituality is concerned, we have to develop spiritual intelligence. In other words, the intelligence is enabling all these activities, surviving and enabling all activities materially. But if we want to come to spiritual, at the moment the intelligence is strong for material activities, but very weak for spiritual activities. Very, very weak for spiritual activities. So if one wants to, be involved in spiritual life, then the intelligence has to be strengthened. So general engagement in Krishna consciousness purifies and strengthens all the levels. It strengthens and purifies the intelligence, the mind, the senses, all become purified to the point where they're actually no longer required. And is mentioned that the soul proper, when on the liberated platform, engages in direct relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no need for the material intelligence, material mind, there's no need for that, although while living in the world, the devotee enables it to function. But actually there's no need, because the soul proper of a liberated, advanced devotee is engaged directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. always remember that story in New York when the reporter was interviewing Prabhupada and was just asking so many different questions. She asked a question about how do you understand how to do things in your Krishna consciousness. And Rameshwara Prabhu, he was there, and he kind of answered. He said that, well, by use of intelligence and the mind and engagement, then we can understand by reading all the Shastras, we can understand how to engage in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada interjected. He said, no. He said, Krishna tells me directly. Always remember that. He said, Krishna tells me directly. So a very, very advanced devotee is communicating directly with Krishna. But for those who are not on that level, then it is recommended that one should be very careful when interacting with the senses, the material senses, and the mind, and has to be very, has to understand how to engage the senses and the mind, how to understand, to engage them in Krishna's service. So all these, general engagement in Krishna consciousness will purify all the levels. But specifically to strengthen, it's very important to strengthen our intelligence, spiritual intelligence. Because when the spiritual intelligence is strong, then it will control the mind. And then the mind will control the senses. At the moment, the mind is, we know from Bhagavad Gita, it's our best friend or our worst enemy. Generally in material life, it's pretty much our worst enemy. It's always thinking about things, how to indulge in material sense gratification. This tendency to lord it over and exploit everything and utilize things for my enjoyment. This is our worst enemy, spiritually speaking. And the mind and the senses just drag around the intelligence. Drag around the spiritual intelligence and also the material intelligence, actually. Whatever the senses, I want to see this. Instead of the intelligence, all right, do it like this. The eye sees something and say, all right, immediately, intelligence, you work it out, how to get that thing that I'm seeing. It's like giving an order. You do it. Instead of the intelligence working out what I should be doing, it's the senses. Practically each sense, all of them combined. So, I smell this nice, whatever it is over there, do it, organize it. It's just ordering the intelligence around, right? And, you taste something, I want more. Just work out how I can get more. Do it now. So go thus, where instead of being the master, we're the servant, total servant. So all the touch, I touch this, and I want to touch more, or I want to go over there and touch. Just do it and work it out now. And if you don't, I'm get angry. And then the mind is also, so many ideas, this, that, the other thing. And intelligence, do it now. I got this idea, just do it. No, you shouldn't do it. No, are you challenging me? Are you challenging me? I'm going to get angry. Right? And then, this constant demand from both the senses and the mind on the intelligence. The intelligence, after all, just gives up and just follows whatever the dictates of the senses are, and the mind is just gets beaten down into submission. And we've had many lifetimes of that, and there's no way to overcome it too. But if one can purify, and specifically it is as far as strengthening the spiritual intelligence, there are two ways. One way is, Prabhupada actually mentions, one needs a lot of knowledge from books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. One needs to study these things very, very carefully, because by studying and understanding these things, the spiritual intelligence becomes strong. And the other way, of course, is by associating with very advanced devotees. By associating, by being in their presence, just that is purifying in itself, but also hearing their instructions. hearing their instructions. So hearing their instructions and so on. These two methods are considered are the best methods specifically for strengthening our spiritual intelligence. And when our intelligence becomes strong, spiritual intelligence becomes strong, then naturally all the subordinates will fall into line. So one needs to, here is mentioned that Indriyani paranyuhu indriyebhya paramanaha manasastu parabhudi yobude paratastusa. One should steady the mind and the senses by deliberate spiritual intelligence. Deliberate spiritual intelligence. So that one can have deliberate spiritual intelligence by studying, hearing the Shastras and taking the instructions and advices of the senior devotees. And also mentioned in one section of the Bhagavatam I was reading about Sudama. Sudama Brahmana went to see Krishna and he offered him some chip rice. He thought to ask, because he was very poor, and he thought maybe he should go there, and maybe his wife also suggested, you were childhood friends, just ask Krishna to help us. But when he went there, he just couldn't ask. But when he came back to his village, he saw that it was all transformed. And the whole village was very poor, but he couldn't recognize it. Very tall buildings, like palatial, and everyone was dressed very opulently. His wife came out, and so after seeing that, he understood that this was the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then he thought to himself that, how am I going to live in this situation and not be affected by all that and become dragged down into material consciousness? So he understood all the instructions. He concentrated on all the instructions he had learnt over many years about what the body is, what the world is, what happiness and distress is, and what Krishna consciousness is, what his constitutional position is. So by doing that, by concentrating that, he used his spiritual intelligence. This is actually mentioned. He used his spiritual intelligence to control any tendency that might come up to indulge in those things and forget Krishna. Now, it is also explained by the Acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that he didn't really need to do that because he was already a pure devotee. Just spontaneously, he would always remember Krishna, and he wouldn't have had to worry about being affected in that way. But he thought like that, and this is more or less instructive for all of us who are conditioned. All of us who are conditioned, we don't have that direct. We're not on that level yet. Spontaneous. We're spontaneously thinking of Krishna. We're not on that level yet. When you're spontaneously thinking of Krishna, you can't think of anything else. So there's no need to worry about, deliberate spiritual intelligence and controlling the mind and the senses. You're just naturally thinking of Krishna. But for those who are conditioned, we have to use these sharpened spiritual intelligence by all this transcendent knowledge and instructions and association, and then these other things can become easier to control and direct towards the perfection in Krishna consciousness. So here, Prabhupada goes on, just to go back a little bit, the active senses, the knowledge-acquiring senses, all different products of the second mode of nature, mode of passion, and how all this is transformed. But the main point here I wanted to emphasize is the intelligence and the prana, but we have to go to the spiritual intelligence and spiritual activities. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Has anyone got any question or comment? Manibanda, yes.
So So Mahacho, we understand that the super soul is all pervading, like within every atom, etc. The Brahma Jyoti is all pervading. The ether, all pervading as
The ether?
the sky. You mentioned prana is all pervading, so it's sort of obviously very complex. So I'm just wondering, is this how everything is interacting together, something we should understand, or everything is like different dimensions, is just going on automatically anyway? Or?
Well, it's all under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But, you know, they're different manifestations of ultimately the same energy, but going in different ways and acting in different ways. You know, so the prana, and what did you say, all the different categories you gave?
Well, there was super soul, Brahma Jyoti, ether, prana.
Yeah, Brahman. Yeah, some think the pradana is Brahman, but actually it's not. Pradana is Brahman is devoid of any material elements. Pradana is the unmanifest. Prakriti is the manifest. And then you have this prana, which is an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Personality. But it's all overseen by Paramatma in this world. And he is everywhere. And so he is directing how all the... Of course, he hands that direction over to the Parashakti, the Maya and everything, but he's generally overseeing it all. So they're all acting in different ways. Yeah, exactly. Acting in different ways. So this prana is very interesting, the life energy, how it's there, and without it, the body can't function. And it's all by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so the nadis are everywhere. They're nourishing every cell of the body. Tens of thousands. As I said, some say 72,000. But I think a number is given just to give us an idea that there's a lot of them in there. And they're all crisscrossing and going all over the place. And I talked about the main ones, the Ida, the Pingala, and the Shushumna, which is the main one in the centre, goes right to the crown. That's the main one. You can liberate the soul through that one. Then you have all this Kundalini Shakti, that serpent at the base of the spine. All this is there in yoga principle, yoga understanding. So those who are very advanced yogis can manipulate that. So.
The comment also mentioned like hearing is most important according to medical science. When you're leaving your body on your deathbed, the last sense of active is the hearing. And so that's why it's very important. Like, it's nice to have devotees chanting around because it's the last sort of awareness you're going to have before you go on.
Right, yeah. I think that's all we've got time for today, Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.